Actually, my first ever work experience was when I was studying, because I believed in the power of what work experience can do for you. And I interned when I was in undergrad, although it was not compulsory. I said I want to intern, and I started interning when I was, I think, 18 and a half years old. So that was my first experience of being in a corporate environment. I was working with an NGO at that time. It was a not-for-profit role that I took on, and I learned so much just being around people doing the kind of work that they were doing. So to me, I think the first industry that I worked in and the first job that I got paid for was dancing. While I could have made an entire career out of it, I think I realized that I have multiple interests. So I started sort of bifurcating my interests and saying, so my first actual job, apart from the internships, I was an intern at the Hindu. So my first job was also as a journalist for the Hindu. And after that, I realized that because I have these multitudes of interests, I became an entrepreneur very early on in my career. So the first thing that I did was I had a card which read content writer, freelance journalist, dancer and choreographer, website content, and it had some 6 or 7 items on that. Those were my first jobs and those were my first roles. So that's my first memory of actually going out there into the market and saying, I'm capable of doing all of this and I'll take on projects. So I started out as an entrepreneur, which sometimes is a difficult task to do. But since it was services, and since it was in the space of actually finding avenues to find work through people and network and connections, I think it really helped hone a lot of the skills that came to my help at a later stage. So that's how I started, and I remember, and that's how it started. And then I moved on into an events firm for a bit. I did events entirely for some time, and then I moved from there into marketing and communications for a tech firm. And then from then on, the career took off on a path. And parallelly, I was also anchoring, I was also dancing, I was also choreographing, so I managed to do this just after my degree. So insurance broking is very simple. There are insurers who write insurance, who underwrite insurance, and there are people who get insurance, right? Insurers now are of 2 types. There is B2B insurance, which is for businesses, and then there's personal insurance, which is what we all take, right? Now, a lot of times, if our companies cover us, that comes under B2B insurance. Or if I'm covered and you're covered by health insurance, which our company is giving us, that is business to business, right? So insurers will underwrite for these organizations. Similarly, you will insure your directors and officers, you will insure your business itself, you will insure the property that you're in. So you look at an array of risks. So brokers sit in between the client and the insurer. We act like risk consultants. So we understand your business, we understand what are the risks you're exposed to, and then we work with the insurer and our customers to build and stitch together the best kind of program to mitigate and manage the risks that are there. Now my job role there is I head marketing and communications. So that's what I do for the India business. So I think what has happened in the last 6 months is perhaps something that nobody precedented, and there's so many conversations around it. But what I think is important is to stay abreast and is to stay ahead of the game and constantly know what's news versus fake news, know what is important and relevant to clients versus what is not, to know what they're already hearing from everybody and see where you can bring in that value which probably nobody else can, and sort of try and stay focused in terms of what you can provide in terms of relevance and context and business help, because right now is where people need to be assisted and helped in so many ways, and it need not always be monetary. So there's also this angle of empathy, understanding the business and all of it that comes in, and the roles that they play that are important to know the nuances of. So firstly, remember that right now is not the time to think only about yourself. Yes, it's important to think about sustaining long term. It's important to think about how to get over this, etc., etc. But what people want to hear is that we're here for you. And what people want to hear both as stakeholders, which is either internal teams that you have or external customers that you sort of, either provide products or services to, what they want to know is, are you somebody who is empathetic? Are you somebody who's willing to hear? Are you somebody who's willing to understand? Are you somebody who's not trying to oversell your product too much? At the same time, are you helping in any form? If not your own personal communities around you, at least are you doing something for other communities which are perhaps not privileged? So right now, I think people want somebody who's compassionate, kind, empathetic. And I think it's time for brands to look at not just their persona in terms of what they sell and how they sell it, and their brand value in terms of numericals, but more in terms of emotions and the softer qualitative aspects of being a brand. And your communication should reflect who you are as a brand. So if you're a brand who's fun, you can still be funny and still be empathetic. If you're a brand that wants to, pitch in on this conversation and be relevant and provide various angles and aspects of how you can get people to go, because the problems are very many, right? And every brand can somehow become a problem solver in the way it's approaching its communication. There are many brands that have done really interesting work in these times. There are many brands that have also sometimes overstepped and overdone it, and the intent has been from a good place, the execution not exactly. So it's good when you're building a strategy to communicate, or when you're building a strategy to become this brand that wants to be empathetic, to pass it by maybe outsiders who perhaps just know you as a brand, because sometimes we are blindsided by our own brands and the brands that we work with. Take one thing at a time, and then you fix that. If it's food and nutrition, you do that once, then you take a couple of weeks and keep that consistent, then you bring in the next change and sort of manage that way. But it is hard times, and a lot of people are going through a lot of trouble. Also, another thing that really helps me is it's gratitude. If you have the ability to see how the world is struggling, and if you have the ability to sort of realize how blessed you are in terms of having work to do, in terms of having people to talk to, in terms of food, family, all of that, I think a lot of us are only, unfortunately, it's the human brain's conditioning to look at what's not okay. But if you look at how lucky and privileged we all are, it helps carry that little struggle a lot easier than otherwise. It was time for everybody to realize that while there's no replacement for face-to-face, and while there's no replacement to build relationships and bonding over technology, it's very important and imperative to see the play of digitization and technology in these times. From the smallest impact being created to the largest, a lot of things are happening online. So I think it's a good time for brands to leverage their access to technology and their ability to digitize a lot of what they were doing otherwise offline. Because what digitization also does is it brings down and keeps your costs low. So you can do a lot of things with your access to data, with your access to tools and platforms that you were perhaps doing offline, online today, and get a far wider reach. Because when you were offline, you were limited by geography. Whereas now there's no geographical limitation to who can join, who can speak, who can do all of this. So I think it's a good time to rethink, realign, and see how digitization can be leveraged for the best bang for the buck from a brand point of view. Multiple things that have happened. I can give you examples across brands. For Anviti itself, there has been a series of ways we've taken our conversations virtual. The way we are engaging is new. The way we are talking to our people is new. In terms of leveraging and adapting digitization, we've done that within Anviti itself. The business doesn't change much because we are, traditional broking in some form and shape. But if you look at, I'm on the advisory board of this resort in Coorg called the Ibni. Now the resort is completely something that was luxury based, travel based. Hospitality has been hit really badly as one of the industries. But what they are looking to do is to take this opportunity and leverage it and make it an integrated healing and holistic center for healing, because they have Ayurveda, they have organic produce that is created here. There is immunity building, that was being done previously. So taking your strengths, see, a lot of times what we tend to do as humans is to look at opportunities that we've lost versus every opportunity lost creates 3 or 4 new opportunities that can be, tapped into. So, having said that, there are so many brands that are innovating and reinventing the way they function and the way they work from a traditional point of view to a new adaptive point of view, where they're able to, open out and communicate and figure out new strategies and new ways of reaching out. So challenges exist, let's be honest. As a woman leader, as a young woman leader who speaks her mind and is unafraid, a lot of times you're, stereotyped. There are labels associated to it. As somebody who's also maybe fast tracking in many ways, there are also stereotypes of being called names, being, called out for it. But what I think works is to sustainably work on your core vision of what you want to do as your impact, what you want to create as your body of work, what is it that you want to give back. Because the minute you stop competing with the rest of the world, the minute you stop comparing yourself to other people, you're on a journey which is very, very self-aware and self-fulfilling. So I think the most important thing to remember is there a glass ceiling? Yes. But do you have to essentially be limited because there's a glass ceiling? No. Yes, money provides some amount of shelter and comfort, but that's irrelevant. What is it that you can be? Who is it that you are? Who are the people you can impact? What is it that you can do to positively change the world to become a better place? What is it that you can do for the future of the children that are growing up into, who will come into the world? So these are all questions that have to come from a inside out approach, so you need to really look at what is it that you want to bring to the table and what are these challenges that you're going to focus on. Because the more you focus on something not working, the more it becomes difficult to overcome that. If you want to change the way you behave and you think as a woman, because you have to first start with being gender neutral, and that, I know it's a far off thing because social conditioning, society, stereotypical structures that exist, heteronormative gender norms that exist, all of this teaches you constantly that you are bound by your gender. But the minute you start thinking from a gender no bias point of view, the minute you start looking at leadership, or the minute you start looking at home, your relationship with the house and all of that without gender directing what you should do or who you are, it becomes a lot more easier. I keep saying this, leadership is not just gender specific. Parenting is not gender specific. Running a house is not gender specific. Washing vessels, cleaning up, none of these are gender specific tasks or roles. So the minute you start doing that with yourself and stop deciding what you should or should not do because of the gender that you belong to, you will automatically start realizing that the potential in you is not specified by the gender you belong to. Your gender can perhaps, especially being a woman, I think is a very powerful thing. It gives you an immense array of skills and thoughts and ideas and a widespread spectrum of what it is that you live with, deal with, etc. To be able to actually fight it on an everyday basis and to come out absolutely unscathed and, winning. So when every time somebody asks me, I say that, you can have the cake and eat it too. Don't believe anybody who says that you need to limit your journey because you've become a mother or you've gotten married, and the same on the other side. Don't ever ask a woman if she is limited by who she is at home, because that has no relevance whatsoever. And multiple examples, I've had people say, but you're pregnant, and I'm like, sorry, my uterus and my brain are not connected.